April 6, 2020. Quibi launches. Hollywood's biggest names. Spielberg, Kerry Washington, Reese Witherspoon. A $15 billion war chest. 6 months later, it's dead. They had everything. Money, talent, distribution deals with major carriers. They built a beautiful product, and nobody wanted to watch it. Juicero. $120 million raised. To sell a $400 juicer that journalists proved could be squeezed by hand. Theranos. $945 million raised on a blood test that didn't work. WeWork. $47 billion valuation that collapsed inside a single month. The graveyard is huge. The names are famous. The money was real. You've heard the number. 90% of startups fail. That number is famous. It's also wrong. The real picture is more complicated, more interesting, and more useful if you're actually trying to build something. Here's what the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics actually shows. 80% of businesses survive year 1. Half make it to year 5. About a third are still alive at year 10. That's not 90% failing. That's a steady, brutal attrition curve. But average hides everything. The information sector, that's tech, software, media, internet, has the worst 10-year failure rate of any industry. 70% of these businesses are dead within a decade. If you're starting a SaaS company, a content business, an app, you are entering one of the most lethal industries in the economy. Now venture-backed startups are different. Cambridge Associates tracked 27,259 of them between 1990 and 2010. Their finding: the failure rate, defined as a return of 1 times or less to investors, has not gone above 60% since 2001. Even during the dot-com bust, it peaked at 79%, not 90%. But here's where it gets brutal. Of startups that raise pre-seed funding, around 60% never make it to Series A. PitchBook data on the seed to Series A graduation rate hovers around 35 to 40%. Most don't fail dramatically. They just quietly run out of runway. They become what investors call living dead. Alive on paper, going nowhere, slowly returning the keys. 3 more numbers worth holding. 75% of venture-backed companies never return their investors' money. Less than 1% become unicorns. That billion-dollar valuation everyone chases. And 0 to 5% of all startups ever raise venture capital in the first place. The conversation about startup failure is, for most founders, the wrong conversation entirely. Most companies die without anyone funding them. So the question isn't why does 90% fail? The question is, what kills the ones that die, and what do the survivors actually do differently? That's where the answer gets useful. CB Insights compiled post-mortems from over 100 dead startups. The number one killer, 42% of them, wasn't competition, wasn't a bad team, wasn't running out of money. It was building something nobody actually wanted. Back to Quibi. They built a streaming service for short-form video. 7 to 10-minute episodes designed for mobile, with a feature called Turnstile that switched between portrait and landscape as you rotated your phone. The product worked. The technology was clever. But they launched in April 2020, the start of the pandemic, when nobody was commuting and everyone had hours to kill on a couch. The use case they designed for had vanished overnight. This is the trap. Founders fall in love with their solution. They spend 2 years building it. They run out of cash. And only at the end do they realize there was no problem to solve in the first place. Or the problem was real, but customers were already living with it just fine. In 2007, Mark Andreessen, yes, that Andreessen, wrote an essay that still required reading in startup land. His argument: the market matters more than the team or the product. A great team in a bad market loses. An average team in a great market often wins. Because in a great market, customers pull the product out of you. They demand it. They forgive your mistakes. And the inverse, when there's no market pull, looks like this. You ship. You announce on Product Hunt. Maybe you get 200 signups. They try it once. Nobody comes back. Your retention curve is a cliff. You blame your marketing. You spend 6 months redesigning the onboarding. The retention curve doesn't move because the problem was never marketing. The problem was that the product wasn't a vitamin people would die without. It was a nice-to-have they could ignore. The first job of a founder isn't to build. It's to find. Find a real, urgent, expensive problem that real people are paying real money to solve badly today. Product market fit. Probably the most overused phrase in tech, and the most misunderstood. The original definition is from Andreessen. PMF means you're in a good market with a product that satisfies that market. Andreessen's test is brutally simple. You can always tell when you don't have it. Customers aren't getting value. Word of mouth isn't spreading. Usage isn't growing fast. Press reviews are meh. The sales cycle takes forever, and you can always tell when you have it. Customers buy faster than you can supply. Servers go down because you can't keep up. Money piles up. You're hiring as fast as you can find people. Reporters call you. Slack is the textbook case. They launched in 2013 as a side project from a failed gaming company called TinySpec. Within 24 hours of public launch, 8,000 signups. Within 2 weeks, 15,000. They couldn't ship features fast enough. Stuart Butterfield, the founder, said the hardest problem wasn't building the product. It was hiring fast enough to keep the servers from melting. That's what PMF feels like. There's also a quantitative test. Sean Ellis, early growth lead at Dropbox, LogMeIn, Eventbrite, proposed a single survey question. Ask your users, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? Very disappointed. Somewhat disappointed. Not disappointed. The threshold. If 40% or more answer, very disappointed. You have product market fit. Below that, keep iterating. Here's the harder truth. Most companies that find PMF didn't find it on the first try. Slack came out of a failed game studio. Instagram started as a check-in app called Bourbon. Twitter was a pivot from a podcast company called Odeo. YouTube started as a video dating site. The path to PMF is rarely the original idea. It's whatever you discover when you ship, watch what users actually do, and follow the signal. Until you have product market fit, nothing else matters. After you have it, almost everything else can be fixed. The day you raise money is the day the death clock starts. Investors give you cash. You spend it on salaries, servers, office space. The rate at which you burn through it, your monthly net cash outflow, is called burn rate. The number of months you can keep going at current burn, that's runway. This is where it gets dangerous. You raise a $2 seed round. You think, runway equals 24 months. You hire 12 engineers because you want to ship faster. Each engineer in San Francisco costs you $150,000 a year, fully loaded. Salary, taxes, benefits, equipment. Now you're burning $230,000 a month. That 24-month runway just became 10 months. And you didn't notice, because hiring feels like progress. Standard advice from operators like Paul Graham at YCombinator. You need to start fundraising at least 6 months before you run out of cash. Because raising takes 3 to 6 months. And if investors smell desperation, that you have less than 90 days left, they will use it against you. Term sheets get worse. Valuation drops. Sometimes the round doesn't close at all. WeWork is the cautionary tale at the extreme scale. They were burning roughly $200,000 per hour. Their 2019 IPO documents revealed losses of $1.9 billion on $1.8 billion in revenue. The market saw the math, refused the IPO, and the valuation collapsed from $47 billion to under $10 billion in a month. SoftBank had to bail them out. They eventually filed Chapter 11 in 2023. WeWork's story isn't no market need. It's burned faster than the world could finance. There's a real trade-off here. Burn fast and you compress time. You find out faster whether you have something, but you also have less time to recover if you're wrong. Burn slow, sometimes called default alive. And you buy yourself more shots, more iterations, more chances to find the right thing. Paul Graham wrote an essay about this in 2015. His argument: as a founder, you should always know whether you're default alive or default dead. Default alive means, at your current growth and burn, you'll become profitable before you run out of money. Default dead means, you won't. Most founders don't know which one they are. That's the actual problem. Cash discipline isn't sexy. It's also the only thing standing between you and the death clock. The term MVP, minimum viable product, was popularized by Eric Ries in the Lean Startup 2011. It's now the most misused acronym in tech. Founders treat MVP as a synonym for crappy version 1. That's not what it means. And the misunderstanding kills companies. The original definition is much sharper. An MVP is the smallest possible thing you can build that still validates a real hypothesis about your customer. The key word is viable. It has to be good enough at one specific job that someone is willing to pay you, sign up, or change their behavior. A broken prototype with a long bug list isn't an MVP, it's a demo. Dropbox is the famous example. In 2007, before they wrote a single line of production code, Drew Houston shot a 3-minute video showing what Dropbox would do: file sync across devices. He posted it on Hacker News. The waitlist went from 5,000 to 75,000 overnight. That video was the MVP. It validated demand without building the hard thing. Only after the demand was proven did they build the engineering. Now compare to Juicero. They spent 2 years and over $100 million building an industrial-grade Wi-Fi connected juicer that pressed proprietary fruit packs. Beautiful engineering. Patented mechanism. Then Bloomberg journalists discovered you could just squeeze the packs by hand and get the same juice. The MVP, squeezing a pack, would have killed the company in week 1. Instead, they shipped a finished, polished product into a market that didn't exist. MVP isn't how little can I build. MVP is what's the cheapest way to learn whether anyone cares. After all this, here's what the survivors actually do. It's not glamorous. It's not the founder mythology you read in magazines. It's 5 disciplines, repeated boringly for years. First, talk to customers before building. Patrick and John Collison, founders of Stripe, famously visited dozens of small developers in person before writing the first version of their payment API. They didn't ask, "Would you use this?" They asked, "What's the worst part of accepting payments online today?" That's how Stripe became the default. They built the painkiller, not the vitamin. Second, find PMF before scaling. The biggest mistake in venture-backed startups is spending the first round on growth before there's anything to grow. Don't hire the marketing team until customers are pulling. Don't open the second office until the first one can't fulfill demand. The cost of premature scaling, according to Startup Genome's 2011 research, is the single most common cause of startup failure at scale. They called it startup death by premature scaling. Third, track the default alive math weekly, not monthly, not quarterly, every Monday. What's the cash? What's the burn? What's the growth rate? What's the runway? If you're default dead and don't know it, you're already losing. If you know it, you can fix it. Fourth, pivot when the signal is clear. Slack pivoted from a game. YouTube from dating. Instagram from check-ins. The willingness to change direction when the data demands it is not weakness, it's survival. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The dead startups in the graveyard didn't die because the founders were stupid or lazy. Most of them are smart, hardworking, technically excellent people. They died because they confused activity with progress. Building features instead of finding customers. Hiring instead of selling. Polishing instead of shipping. Raising instead of earning. The 10% that survive are the ones that develop painfully and over time the discipline to spend their hours on the things that actually move the needle. Customer conversations, distribution, cash discipline, honest measurement, boring stuff, done relentlessly. Startups don't die from a lack of brilliance. They die from a lack of customers. So, the real number is closer to 65 in 10 years, not 90 in 5. The number one killer is no market need. Burn rate is the death clock. MVP is a learning tool, not a crappy product. PMF is the only thing that matters before scaling. And the survivors? They stay default alive long enough to find what works. That's the whole game. If this was useful, subscribe. Next, how VC funding actually works. No fluff.